Welcome back, everybody, for another deep dive into some really exciting NBA action
Yeah,
from last night.
it was a big night.
It was a big night, and you shared some really interesting information about the games,
Oh, yeah.
covering several key matchups. And our mission today is to really get under the skin of these games. Like, we want to understand not just what happened, but
Right.
those pivotal moments and what they might be telling us about these teams' form right now.
Yeah, I think that's exactly right. It's a chance for us to sort of look at how the different teams are operating and the impact that, individuals are having and the little shifts that can make all the difference
Yeah, absolutely.
in a game or in a team's, trajectory for the season.
Yeah, and we've got 5 games in particular that we're going to focus on. We've got the LA Clippers versus the Memphis Grizzlies. We've got Phoenix Suns against the Cleveland Cavaliers. Portland Trailblazers taking on the Denver Nuggets. Boston Celtics versus the Utah Jazz. And then finally, we've got the Dallas Mavericks against the Detroit Pistons.
That's a great mix. You've got teams there who are, have very different ambitions this season and a few results in there that will definitely raise an eyebrow or two.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, and for each of these, we're going to try and pinpoint the crucial factors that swung the outcome and highlight any surprising results or standout individual performances that you really need to know about.
Let's do it.
So let's dive straight in, shall we? First up, the LA Clippers against the Memphis Grizzlies.
Okay.
Final score, 128-108 to the Clippers.
Right.
That looks like a pretty comfortable win on paper, but was it that straightforward?
I mean, what's really compelling about this game, I think, is the way it unfolded. The Grizzlies actually held the lead at halftime.
Okay.
But then the Clippers came out after the break and completely flipped the script.
Wow.
They outscored Memphis by a significant margin, 68-42 in that second half.
Right.
That kind of second half dominance often points to some key adjustments or, a shift in intensity or something, significant like that.
Yeah. So what do you think sparked that turnaround then? Was there a specific tactical change by the Clippers, or did they just come out with a different level of intensity?
Yeah, I mean, I suspect it's probably a combination of factors, when we look at the standout performers, James Harden had an absolute night.
He did, yeah.
30 points, and Kawhi Leonard putting in a very strong all-around performance as well, 23 points and 10 rebounds.
Right.
So, when your key guys are performing at that kind of high level, it definitely elevates the whole team.
Yeah.
It's possible that the Clippers maybe identified some defensive weaknesses in the Grizzlies during that first half.
Right.
And then they really sort of exploited them after the break,
Yeah.
Maybe they found more success on the offensive end, attacking particular matchups or playing a slightly different style.
Yeah. And of course, on the Grizzlies side, they were missing Ja Morant
Right.
for his 4th consecutive game because of that hamstring injury.
Right.
How much of a hurdle was that for them in trying to hold on to that halftime lead?
It's almost impossible to overstate how much the Grizzlies miss Morant. He's such a dynamic force for them, the primary initiator on offense. Somebody who can really create his own shot,
Right.
get to the basket, draw fouls, and without that level of offensive creation and explosiveness, it puts a lot more pressure on the other guys to step up. And as the Clippers sort of intensified their efforts in that second half, the Grizzlies probably just didn't have the firepower to keep pace.
It's interesting, isn't it, how the absence of one player can have such a dramatic impact on a team's performance?
Yeah.
So a decisive win for the Clippers. This was their 5th straight victory.
Yeah.
According to the information that you shared, what does a winning streak like this do for their position and mindset in the Western Conference?
I mean, this kind of consistent winning is huge for the Clippers.
Right.
It not only, bumps them up the standings, but it also builds, crucial momentum and belief within the team as we head, further towards the playoffs.
Yeah.
That cohesion and that confidence that comes from stringing wins together, it can be invaluable.
Mm-hmm.
And it suggests that they're really starting to gel at a critical point in the season.
Right. Okay, let's pivot to our next game. The Phoenix Suns against the Cleveland Cavaliers, with the Suns pulling out a 123-112 victory.
Yeah.
This feels like a really significant win against a strong team from the East.
It does.
What stood out to you in this one?
Well, I mean, this was a real statement win for the Suns, and a lot of it came down to the sheer brilliance of Kevin Durant, who had an absolutely dominant scoring night with 42 points.
Yeah.
when he's playing with that kind of efficiency and volume, he's just incredibly difficult for any team to handle.
Right.
He's a matchup nightmare.
He's a matchup nightmare. 42 points is definitely making a statement.
For sure.
But it wasn't just an offensive explosion, was it? The information also highlights the role of the Suns' defense in this victory.
Yeah, and their defense played a crucial role, particularly in how they managed to contain Donovan Mitchell.
Right.
Mitchell had an uncharacteristically tough night from beyond the arc.
Yeah, he did.
Shooting only 2 of 13 from three-point range.
Yeah.
And to limit a scorer of his caliber to that kind of inefficiency is a real testament to the Suns' defensive game plan and how well they executed it.
Yeah, so did they, I'm just trying to imagine it in my mind, did they focus on, denying him open looks? And
I think so.
Forcing him into tougher contested shots, or was it?
Yeah, I think that's likely what they did. I think they were very physical with him. They tried to deny him the ball as much as possible. And when he did get it, they made sure that he had, a hand in his face or a body in close proximity.
Right. So a combination of Durant's scoring masterclass and a focused defensive effort on Mitchell.
Yeah.
And this marks the Suns' third consecutive win. What's the bigger picture for Phoenix as they try to solidify their spot in the West?
Yeah, and connecting this back to the broader playoff race, these consecutive wins are absolutely vital for the Suns' aspirations of making it through that play-in tournament in the Western Conference. The West is so tight, and every win can shift your position quite significantly. So this kind of momentum can be a huge psychological boost for them as they navigate the final stretch of the regular season.
Absolutely. Now let's move on to a result that might have caught some people off guard.
Okay.
The Portland Trail Blazers beating the Denver Nuggets 128-109. How did Portland manage to pull off this unexpected win?
Well, this is where things get really interesting. And it highlights how individual performances can completely change the complexion of a game.
Yeah.
Deni Avdija had an absolutely phenomenal night for the Trailblazers, putting up 36 points, 8 rebounds, and 7 assists.
Wow. Yeah.
That kind of all-around impact from a player, can single-handedly lift a team. Yeah. Especially against a strong opponent like the Nuggets.
Right. And similar to that Clippers-Grizzlies game, it sounds like the second half was the turning point in this one as well.
Exactly. The Trailblazers really took control after halftime, outscoring the Nuggets 74-50 in that second half. And that significant margin suggests, a real shift in momentum.
Right.
And potentially some defensive adjustments by Portland that really stifled the Nuggets' offense.
Yeah.
It also implies that, the Trailblazers found a rhythm offensively that the Nuggets just couldn't match.
Didn't match, yeah.
In that second half.
Which brings us to the Nuggets. The information you shared mentioned the absence of their key player, Nikola Jokic.
Yeah.
How much of an impact do you think that had on their performance, especially in that second half?
Oh, I mean, Jokic's absence is a monumental factor for the Nuggets. He's not just their leading scorer and rebounder. He's the hub of their entire offensive system, their primary playmaker, the guy that orchestrates everything. And without him on the floor, the whole team dynamic changes.
Yeah.
So it's not surprising that they struggled, particularly in that second half when Portland really asserted themselves.
Yeah.
They just lacked that central figure to initiate the offense and to calm things down, when Portland went on their run.
Right. And this win marks Portland's 4th in a row.
Wow.
Considering their overall season, that's a pretty impressive streak.
It is.
What could be behind this recent surge for them, do you think?
Well, I mean, while Portland might not be in the thick of the playoff race, a 4-game winning streak can do wonders for team morale and, the development of their younger players. It provides valuable experience in winning situations, and it can build confidence for the future.
Yeah.
Upsetting a team like the Nuggets, even without Jokic, can also be a real confidence booster and a sign that, their younger talent is starting to find its footing.
Yeah, and finding that consistency.
Absolutely.
Which is so important.
Yeah.
All right, let's switch gears to the Eastern Conference.
Okay.
The Boston Celtics continued their dominant season with a convincing 121-99 victory over the Utah Jazz.
Right.
What were the key elements that stood out in this game?
Well, the Celtics really demonstrated their overall strength and depth in this matchup. Kristaps Porzingis had a very impactful performance, leading the team with 27 points, 10 rebounds and 6 assists. You know, when he's playing with that kind of efficiency and contributing across the board, he adds a significant dimension to their already potent offense.
Yeah, and Jason Tatum also put in a solid contribution with 26 points.
Yeah.
It seems like that, that star duo is really in sync.
Absolutely.
But it wasn't just their offensive firepower, was it? The information also suggests that the Celtics defense was a major factor in this win.
Yeah, and their defense was a major factor. They managed to force a significant number of turnovers from the Jazz, and then they capitalized on those opportunities.
Yeah.
And that's a hallmark of a team that's well coached and plays with a high level of discipline on both ends of the floor.
Absolutely. On the Jazz's side, they lost by a significant margin, but Colin Sexton managed to put up 30 points.
Right.
What does that tell us about their performance?
Well, I think Sexton's scoring highlights his individual talent and effort, but it also underscores the Celtics' overall control of the game. You know, even a strong individual offensive performance wasn't enough to overcome Boston's cohesive team play on both ends. And it really illustrates the gap, I think, between a top-tier contender like the Celtics and a team that's, still developing.
Still finding its way,
Yeah.
Finally, we have the Dallas Mavericks against the Detroit Pistons, and this one was a much closer affair.
Okay.
With the Mavericks ultimately winning 123 to 117.
Right.
What were the deciding factors in this tight contest?
This game really came down to a few key plays and individual performances.
Right.
Spencer Dinwiddie stepped up as the leading scorer for the Mavericks with 31 points, providing that crucial offensive firepower, especially in a close game like this. And for the Pistons, Cade Cunningham continued to show his potential, putting up a strong stat line of 35 points, 7 rebounds, and 6 assists.
Yeah,
he's really developing into a premier player.
Absolutely. So it sounds like strong individual performances on both sides kept this one close.
Yeah.
What ultimately tipped the scales in favor of the Mavericks.
Well, the information you shared points to the Mavericks' ability to capitalize on turnovers committed by the Pistons.
Right.
And their overall strong shooting performance as the key differentiators, in a tight game like this. Those extra possessions gained from turnovers and the ability to consistently knock down shots can really be the deciding factors.
Yeah, those fine margins.
Yeah, exactly.
And this win is noted as being particularly crucial for Dallas as they continue to fight for a spot in that Western Conference play-in tournament.
Absolutely.
What's the significance of grinding out this kind of close victory?
Every win is absolutely critical in that incredibly competitive Western Conference play-in race.
Yeah.
This narrow victory demonstrates the Mavericks' resilience and their ability to, secure wins even when they're, facing a determined opponent. And those kinds of hard-fought wins can build character and are often the ones that make the difference when, playoff spots are on the line.
Absolutely. So as you can see from these 5 games last night in the NBA, we had a fantastic, we got a fantastic look at team dynamics, some incredible individual performances.
Yeah.
And the real impact that the absence of key players can have. From the Clippers' dominant second half to the Suns' impressive win against the Cavaliers and the Trailblazers' unexpected continued success. There's a lot to digest.
There is. It really underscores the week-to-week, even game-to-game volatility of the NBA. You can't always predict outcomes based on season records alone, particularly when, key players are sidelined.
Yeah, the close Mavericks win and the Celtics' consistent dominance also highlight the different stages teams are in as the season progresses.
For sure.
Whether they're battling for playoff positioning or building for the future.
Yeah, I think what's particularly striking when you look across all these games is just how much the absence of a single key player seemed to influence the outcomes for teams like the Grizzlies and the Nuggets.
Yeah.
It really makes you think about the strategic importance of having depth on your roster.
Absolutely.
And perhaps the over-reliance some teams might have on their star talent.
Yeah.
It's definitely a factor worth considering as the season continues and teams navigate injuries and fatigue and all the other challenges.
Yeah. Well, hopefully this deep dive has given you a really clear and insightful understanding of the key events from last night's NBA action.
Yeah.
You're now armed with a much better picture of what went down in these games.
I hope so.
And what the potential implications could be moving forward.
We've certainly covered a lot, looking beyond just the final scores to understand some of the, the underlying reasons and key moments that shaped these results. So hopefully that gives, the listeners a much richer perspective on the current NBA landscape.
And on that note, here's a final thought for you to consider. Given how significantly the absence of key players impacted some of these matchups, what does that tell us about the overall balance of power in the league right now?
Ooh.
Are some teams just too reliant on one or two superstars? And what strategies could teams employ to better weather those situations and remain competitive? Just something to chew on.
Yeah, that's a great question.
Until our next deep dive.
Looking forward to it.